Bonjour. All quiet on the Western Front. Just finished the game. Early bath for the French. End of term 5. Yeah, it's a really interesting game. I enjoyed it a lot, even playing solitaire. The only confusion I had with the game was how you're supposed to handle headquarters in the game. Lots of sort of conflicting stuff about strategic movement of headquarters and what that means to them in terms of what they can and can't do. I was going to do or attempt to play, as I mentioned on the first video, Ted Racer's, the designer, his his original rules regarding strategic moving of headquarters, and he was going to use rail lines, and they counted as 2 divisions in terms of their impact on the rail capacity. Now that sounded quite clean and attractive, but when you actually implement it, you soon realise that over no man's land, of course, there are no railway lines. So the net effect of that is that once you've made a breakthrough, only being able to strategically move or to redeploy headquarters to support the breakthrough is essentially pointless, because they just rail up to the start of the breakthrough, which is on your original front line, and can go no further. Which means that the defender, knowing this, can do a phase withdrawal. He knows you're still at the end of a supply tether, which you've not been able to do much about. So the game does lose some of its excitement and its sort of dynamic feel. So I kind of noticed that during the first turn, so I was able to sort of reassess and reset things a little bit, and went back to the rules as written largely, but with a couple of provisos, because it still wasn't completely clear what it was supposed to mean in terms of, if you strategically move a headquarters, can it be used to funnel supply? It says it may not become active later in the turn, but inactive HQs, as per the errata, can be used to channel supply, which makes sense. So I came to a bit of a compromise, which I think is how I'll play it from now on. So essentially, I'm using the headquarters rules as written. They don't become active, so don't cost you morale if you want to strap move them. They're kept underneath a strategic mode marker for the turn, and are removed at the start of or at the end of the attrition phase, because they can't be used to transmit supply. And because they don't become activated, as I said, there's no cost to the supply, and they also don't impinge on the number of HQs that you can activate each turn, because by default they're not being activated. So I'm just using the rules as written there, 14.522, which I think limits it to 2 German and 1 of the major Allied partners. And you can also do 1 of the American headquarters when they start to appear in the game. And it keeps it relatively simple. So what that means in terms of gameplay is, if you have a breakthrough, on the following turn you can strategically redeploy a headquarters into the breakthrough, to the sort of spearhead, if you like. Still can't go adjacent to the enemy, but it means you've probably pushed your headquarters 3 or 4 hexes in front of the one that caused the previous bulge, if you like. And that might not sound a lot, but actually it is quite a lot. And it's World War I after all. There's no blitzkrieg here, so it it does mean that you spend that turn, which is 2 weeks. They're sort of fortnightly turns, and 2 weeks to sort out your logistic sort of network and to sort out the lines of supply and to get sort of communications. That sounds about right to me. I think to make it sort of instantaneous, to be able to supply the spearhead straight away, it just seems a bit too sort of instantaneous for my liking. But yeah, what a great game all round. There's nothing else that does this, I don't think. I mean, the way it simulates World War I combat seems right in 1918. Trench lines still very important. The Stoss having the benefit of still being able to use their before losses combat factor to work out their attack column. So that's sort of feels quite good. The tanks on the Allied side get to shoot first. So if you run away to save a step or two, because if you retreat as a defender you can offset some losses, you don't get to fire back. One rule I did forget is that you don't get the one shift to the right if you're firing from trenches against an attack led by tanks. Forgot that once or twice and had to go back and reassess those sort of 2 or 3 attacks. So that all works very well, and the initiative's nice how it flips over. You start to learn the tactics about when to be stacked and when not to be stacked, looking at when the turn might end, because it's an indeterminate number of couplets. As the sort of non-initiative player, you don't really want to be fully stacked at the start of the new turn, because you'll be suffering some horrendous barrage losses as the enemy headquarters activate and start to pound your lines if they're given them a target-rich environment. So I'll show you the map. As I say, it was quite a quick game, really. I'm almost tempted to sort of play it again. Maybe go for an attack against the British forces rather than the French. And I think I probably could have played the French better. I don't think the game's broken by any stretch of the imagination. Sometimes solo play is tough to decide that you are playing both sides equally well or equally poorly. So let's have a look at the map. So what finally did it for the French was the fall of Verdun. Came at a heavy cost because it was stacked with, I think, 3 French divisions as well, so they were essentially taking out at least 2 full divisions on every attack. But the advantage you have here is that the defender can only engage one of the attacking hexes, so if you can surround the fort and have enough reserves, you can keep pounding away. So Verdun fell, and that was an A-class town effectively, so that caused a big morale loss. And at the end of turn 5, I've just had an end of operations die roll, so the couplet's over, and we have Chalon in that pocket, and Epinal, I think it is, in that pocket. They're both Bs. The French morale was on 6. The lowest you can get with a B is a 2. In fact, I threw a 6 and a 4 or something, which would have been a loss of about 8. And also on the following turn, there were no American divisions arriving on turn 6. So that's an automatic 2-point morale loss for the French. So they were well and truly toast. And the Americans were starting to push in a little bit from the side, but of course only having an HQ to help with the supply situation meant that they were attacking it out of command, so half strength. And if you activate the HQ, that costs you 2 morale. They just did not have the morale to spare to try and get some sort of counter-attack going. Again, maybe could have done that better. There's a couple of turns where I activated 2 French headquarters, I think, so you're thinking, well, if I'd have waited and not done one of those and maybe done that one, don't know. Lots to think about for any replays. So you can see that it's a pretty substantial German push. They're even coming up on the gates of sort of Chateau Thierry and Villers-Cottier, I think that is. Can't quite read it from here. But it wasn't all going the German way, because the British sector have taken big chunks of the German turf. They've kicked them out of a lot of the primary trenches. This is all tank attacks, really soaking up all the reserves that they can. One mistake I did make as the Germans was I did a strategic reserve move on a turn that I really needed to rail a lot of reinforcements up to bolster this area, so they were really on a tight line for quite a while. And here you can see as well they've pushed into these, that we're now into the secondary trenches. So another turn or two, and that was really going to start to get quite desperate. They did strategically move some British forces down to support the French line. In fact, the headquarters are still down there, but they were sort of swamped. They were gobbled up by the German attacks. So it's a fine game, actually. Hopefully the 3rd edition that I think is being done will do it justice, and that many other people will be able to enjoy this great game. I hope you enjoyed watching.